Alright, this important video, I want to try to explain something, and something that made me very, very angry when I realized what was going on. And I think you'll understand why. It's money. It's about money. It's about the creation of money. Actually, since I was quite young, I wondered where money came from, how it came into being, because I saw in our world that money was always growing and it was increasing. And at first I just accepted that, well, it's because people kept digging up more gold and silver, and that money was backed up by metals, even copper for pennies and nickel. And yet it was a mystery to me, because I'm like, where's all this gold being dug up and stuff? You hear about gold mines, but I realized that it seemed like there was a lot more money in the world than the metals that were being produced. And also, what really kept it a mystery to me was that if the money was growing because gold was being discovered, then that would mean that all the money that was in the system came from those who produced the gold. And it just didn't make sense. It seemed like, well, that's quite a small number of people probably. But it's very, very much admitted today that money is issued out of nothing. There was big news somewhere around the beginning of the year, last winter, early spring. Lindsey William mentioned it, that the Federal Reserve was going to print up, I don't know, something like $40 billion a month out of nothing. Well, it was already being issued out of nothing. And here's kind of a analogy that might work. Simple idea I just thought up a little while ago, how to explain this. And that's, say you got a table of men that are gamblers, and that like represents America. These gamblers, however many they are, they're gambling, and they want higher stakes, and they want more money. They're not satisfied with the amount of money that they have to gamble. And so somebody comes along and says, hey, we'll print you up money and just give it to you, and then you gotta pay interest on it. But it's our money, and so you got to give it back to us. And the gamblers would be like, well, we got to give you all the money that you give us to gamble with, but we got to give it back to you? Are you kidding? No way. Well, we're not going to do that. That's a bad deal. And you're going to charge interest? That means you're going to get all the money we got already right now. But eventually, the gamblers got talked into it because the one that came along said, well, yeah, but we'll just keep issuing. There'll always be plenty of money for you because we'll just keep issuing more. And because they wanted to play the high stakes and everything, and they were so into the gambling that eventually they agreed to have somebody issue them all this money, even though they had to pay it back. But there'd be, more coming than what they had paid back. So they were able to gamble some really high stakes, but they kept having to pay it all back, plus interest on it. Now, nobody would make a deal like that. It wouldn't happen. But what's going on is like somebody made a deal like that. And there's been like all of the infrastructure money, all of the taxes, or the stuff that government spendings, but also the majority of all the money that the banks loaned out to businesses and individuals to buy homes, all the money issued out, even through the credit cards. All of it is required to be paid back with interest. And that's what's going on. And there have been hundreds of trillions of dollars issued out by the Federal Reserve to the federal government, to the states, and to the businesses, and to the general public, for those who had good enough credit to be able to put mortgages on their homes, buy automobiles on debt, refrigerators, whatever. But all of that money, which everybody knows is not backed up by gold, was issued right out of nothing. It was decreed into existence. And they call it fiat money. And the fractional reserve part is that technically they're supposed to, the banks that make loans to the public and to the businesses were required to have 10% on hold that they held on to back up, or maybe they lent that out. And people say the money, well, it's not real money. And yeah, it's not real money when it's issued out because it's really debt and it needs to be paid back. But actually, it is money, it works. People borrow money from the bank, they go purchase what they need. If it wasn't real money, they wouldn't be making purchases. But all that money is supposed to be paid back to the bank plus interest. Now, I don't know what the deal is, how much individual banks get to hold on to themselves of that money issued out of nothing that gets paid back. They're able to keep some of that money. And it's a big deal. It's a huge ripoff. And as far as chasing the money changers out of the temple, when I see what's going on, I would say, yeah, if they were doing anything like that, but they were probably not even that criminal in what they're doing. It's a big trick, it's a big deception, and most of the money in the world, hundreds of trillions of dollars, were produced by the American people from their labors, from their hard earnings that they paid back in taxes and paying down their loans. They got off the gold standard and all that, I believe, back in the 30s. I'm not an expert on this stuff. I'm a practical thinker, and I'm looking at cause and effect, not at all the details. But we, the American people, have produced most of the money that is in the world today. That's why the dollar became the world currency. I mean, why not the British pound? Reason why is because there wasn't as many Britons with an economy to produce like here in North America, and especially the United States of North America. And all of that money that gets paid back, if you think about it right now, that the majority of money that people are paying back to the banks for their loans, for their mortgages, for their credit cards, all the tax money, everything from the taxes is going through the IRS. I guess there's a little bit going into the U.S. Treasury. I think that's for show. A lot of things are for show. I think even charging interest on that is just to throw us off. Why would they even need interest on money issued out of nothing? I really woke up to it when I heard about what was going on with Ben Franklin. I believe it was in Philadelphia, or maybe it was Boston, but another nation asked him, well, how do you guys deal with poverty? And he said, we don't have any poverty. And they're like, you don't have any poverty? How's that? He's like, well, we issue money out according to how much the people are producing. And they were issuing the money according to the product of the people, whether they were digging up gold or growing crops or manufacturing things or building things. There was money being issued out to cover for that, so that it could be used as a currency, as a means of trade rather than barter and exchange. And I believe it's ancient. I believe they were doing that in Babylon. I believe it's been going on for a long time. And looking at, well, how did they get away with that in this country? How did they do that? And there's a video that Dan Dix of Press for Truth had made, where he went to Washington, D.C., and he went into the temple of the 33rd degree Mason of their Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite of Masonry. And in that video, he gets some explanations of some things, and he films some stuff. One of the explanations is that, well, the 33rd degree Masons, they gather here, the Supreme Council, once every 2 years to discuss politics and, guess what, money. And in that video, there's a rather beautiful stained glass window, and it says on it, it says FIAT LUX. And I realized that even though they're claiming that that means let there be light, as the Creator had said in the beginning, that they were saying let there be luxury, let there be money. And I even made comments, and I had some oh boy, people were trying to straighten me out. Oh, no, that doesn't mean, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. That means, let there be light. Well, they can't produce light, but they can issue money out of nothing. They cannot decree light, and they're not decreeing light. They're not issuing light out of nothing. It's money by just declaring it. Now they got rules and stuff, but at that point I was convinced, and I am convinced, that that's the purpose of the 33rd degree Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Now, the majority of Masons are not involved in the directly of that, and probably the vast majority are not aware of this. The bankers, they're aware. They're doing the math. They know what's going on. But it wasn't just so bad that they were issuing money out of nothing, but it's, well, what are they doing then with all that money? Well, for one thing, they're building their playgrounds around the world. But they've controlled everything. They have unlimited funds for the things that they want to do. And they don't want the people empowered. They don't want the people to have wealth. We would be so wealthy. I saw how much we were producing as Americans at a pretty early age, and I couldn't figure out why we just weren't wealthy, why there was scarcity. And I understand. I understood this here. I understood the issuing of the money, but 3 years ago, for a certainty. And I was curious about what's the Masonic order. What are they doing? What's their purpose? And they're very, very much involved in the building of the infrastructure, the roads, the dams, the power companies, all these things. A lot of the degrees that Masons get are because of their engineering degrees. A lot of them are engineers. But also judges and law enforcement, and who knows what. I'm gonna try to hook you up with Dan Hicks's video where I think he called it "Enter the Temple" or something like that. And he isn't saying what I'm saying in that video. He's just showing the temple. There's a bit of a guide there, a young man who's explaining a few things. But when I saw that stained glass window, I knew for certain, and it made so much sense, that although the Masonic order, I don't believe that they own the Federal Reserve. I believe it's more the other way around. Whoever owns the Federal Reserve owns the Masons, basically. And I had understood for a long time that the Freemasons have unseen masters, men in hooded cloaks who they don't know who they are, and they're just simply your satanic high priests who are behind all of this stuff. Satanic, and what I mean by that primarily is the adversary. They're adversaries, they're not here to help us. Now the Masons, I think that most of them probably really sincerely believe that they're there to help us and they're there to do a good work, and that it makes a lot of sense to them. But I think they're very sadly mistaken. I think that with their vows of secrecy, and that they're actually even committing treason, and I don't think most of them are even vaguely aware of what I'm actually really saying. And this thing is really important to understand, because as far as I'm concerned, we don't owe a nickel in taxes. We don't owe certainly the majority of our loans, although you borrow money, and I do it sometimes. I'll go to the bank and my credit's good and I can just say, I need a couple $1,000s or something, and I can borrow it, and I'm happy to pay that back with the interest. But when I think about it, it's like, well, so that means that I'm actually paying them all that money back. It neutralizes that money. I'm not able to spend that money on my neighbors and stuff and add it into the system. So it actually reduces the value of any money that I might have. Now, I don't know if I'm explaining it very well. I'm trying to keep it simple. I understand it. I see it. I see a huge pipeline going to the central banks, the Federal Reserve and the regional Federal Reserves. Just a huge pipeline of real money. These are earnings of people. And it's going all the tax money through the IRS, and the majority of the money being paid back on people's personal debts. Virtually all the majority of industry, businesses in this country, farms, these are not owned by the proprietors or the partners or whatever in these businesses. Most of those businesses, if the banks won't loan the money, they're going to fold. That's why the big stink about, well, you need to borrow out money. That's why the bailout that was required, it was actually like a blackmail, but it was also another deception. They don't want the people to understand what's really going on. And that $1 trillion or two in bailouts is actually not very much in comparison to what's gone on and going on. But at least the banks did end up to continuing lending out money. I think there are politicians today that are actually probably even heroic in their efforts to keep our economy going. It's so easy to judge these men, and believe me, I'm not impressed by any of them, really, that I know of. But I know there's a lot more to it, and they still are dignitaries and such that we need to have some respect for. I mean, without that, that's how we got this whole thing with Saddam Hussein, that so much of the American people were so willing to see the man hung. Here he's a leader of a nation. The people of this country didn't know anything about what was going on over there. Here's a man who has held together Iraq, and he did. And there was Christians. You know, there was a strong million Christians that were totally free in Iraq, not being persecuted, not having difficulties. Now, Saddam did not allow the fundamental extremism that a lot of people wish wasn't in this country. And over there, you know, the Christians weren't allowed to, they didn't have the free speech like in this country, but even in this country, there's limits on how much you can get into somebody's face and try to push your faith on them. And over there, that wasn't allowed. And what that did was allow the people to live in peace with each other. It was a good thing, not a bad thing, that he was doing over there. After Saddam went down, so did the Christians in Iraq. Libya is another really good example. And with Libya, for sure, and it's pretty well known that Gaddafi had kicked the bankers out of Libya. He wouldn't deal with a central bank, a world bank. Our Federal Reserve is just one region of, it's either 8 or 10, or there's 10 regions and 8 of them they have under control in the world, where they're issuing the money to the nations in that region. But things that people don't understand about Gaddafi, the reason that he even became a leader of that nation is because he actually, there was a whole bunch of this kidnapping children and pedophilia and stuff that was going on over there, and he rooted them out of the country, and he was a hero over there. And then he showed love to Libya, he wasn't living in a palace. His family wasn't. He swore that he wouldn't until everybody else had a home. And he was doing everything there for the people to have homes. Gasoline was like 20 cents a gallon or something ridiculous. He built a system to distribute water in the country. And the American people unknowingly voted against him, approved of his murder, which seemed to have been something that Hillary Clinton had to see to, that was done, that he was taken out. That was her part of the deal. I believe she got her orders from Bilderberg. But even Bilderberg, that's where those people go there. Those people are getting their marching orders. And they're being used to figure out, they're getting orders and they got to figure out how to do it. They're not being told how they got to do things. They got to get it done. And what we were seeing with Hillary being so excited when Gaddafi was dead, what she was so excited about wasn't that he was dead, but she was totally giddy, like a little kid with her favorite sucker, because she was going to be able to live. It was him or her. It was obvious. I saw that. And this is all about these bankers. And they're doing what they want on this planet. There's a place, Area 51. Oh, that's where they're hiding UFOs and stuff. Baloney. That is a bunch of crap. That's a playground for the elite. There may be development going on and stuff like that, but that's a playground. There's other playgrounds for the elite. But I'm quite confident that Area 51, that's what's going on. It's not run by our government. It's not any more a federal installation than the Federal Reserve is. And I think this is one of the most important things that can help the people in the country here to understand what we're up against, so that if there's any hope at all for change, it's not going to come without a comprehension, without a realization of what's really going on. I think there's so much distractions. If it's not one thing, it's another. For some people, it's Mars. Oh, they've gone to Mars. People have, well, I listened to quite a few of these stories, and they get into these trip chairs, and it's virtual reality. They may think they went to Mars. I'm quite certain they didn't go to Mars. And there's there's a rush to get off the planet. Well, I don't believe that either. and I think there is some real high-tech stuff and a lot of secret technology. I think it's very likely that there's huge platforms like small cities up in our atmosphere right now, for whatever reasons. Probably, many times larger than aircraft carriers, and that aircraft are able to land on these platforms. But I'm not sure about that, but that's about as far as I'm willing to go with potential technologies. Personally, I believe that we did go to the moon. Lindbergh flew the Spirit of St. Louis. All that stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's happened. Our lives are real, and everything's not such a mystery. But the money has been a big mystery. It was a mystery for me all my life, not like something I had a lot of passion about or so, but I certainly had a curiosity, because I wasn't settled in my own mind. I wasn't confident with that money was because of the gold. I think gold makes a really good currency, and it has a value to it, but it's awkward. It's awkward. Paper money is excellent. Even digital money is still real money. If you can make purchases, it's money. And I think God created money, and all that is also part of the whole truth of our reality. Some people say, well, in the future there won't be any money. Maybe someday there won't be money, but I believe for the next 1,000 years there's gonna most likely still be money. Or I'm just missing something and I can't see it, but I can see the money working, and I don't see anything wrong with it. The majority of our system here, it works. We prove that money works. The only thing is we got to work our asses off, pay all that money back. We're working 10 times more. We'd probably be actually wealthier working 4 hours to produce in this country than 40 hours a week. And I myself, I've worked those 60 and 80 hour weeks, and it's been very frustrating that not being able to get ahead, seeing the cards stacked against us. And when I understood what they were doing, and then that because of that crime and that robbery, that's one of the reasons they want to kill people off. Because they're afraid of us. They're afraid we'll find out. What are we going to do? Well, we found out. We just don't realize it yet. We don't know it. Some people do. Now, I've heard Alex Jones and others, say they're issuing money out of nothing. But I've never heard them really explain, like what I'm trying to explain, that we got a couple $1 trillion in our economy that we spend on each other and between each other and stuff, and we produced hundreds of trillions of dollars that aren't here, that there's a little bit comfort knowing that, well, it helped other nations and built them up, but it also put them in debt. They're in the same position that we are, and we're supposed to owe this stuff back to, we can stop it right now. We can issue our own money by the states. We can have the same currency, or we can have different currencies. I don't think it matters that much. It's an agreement. If you agree that it's money, if somebody will accept what you're giving them for the product that they're trying to sell, then it's money. If you got a bank account and you got money in the bank, you can just take a piece of paper and write a check on it, IOU, and it's good. Put your signature on it, it stands up. Now, that isn't the way we do things, so you don't see that, but I remember being explained when I was in high school, and I thought it was curious, and they didn't teach us much, but they were like teaching us how to balance our checkbook, and this was about the extent of money being taught. And that they said, well, you can bake a cake and write a check out in the frosting, and it's good. You just gotta take it to the bank before the frosting wears away or something. But I really got angry, and it wasn't only because of money, but because that they're using that money to develop all these methods to poison us, to cause wars, get us to kill each other. I used to really be like, the wars, oh my God, they're awful. Well, let me tell you, abortion kills more than the wars. Pharmaceuticals kill more than the wars. The food in this country kills more people than the wars. The wars kills fewer people probably than most of these other activities that are being done. The war is almost insignificant in comparison. The wars are awful, but so is all this other stuff. And it's so obvious how they're trying to get us distracted. I mean, Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman and that whole debacle is so obvious. This is the first time I even mentioned it. I don't even talk about it. I just watch it and I'm like, yeah. But most people are neither supporting Trayvon Martin or Zimmerman. They might have an opinion, but most people aren't, angry and going to go riot and that. And they get, 50, 100, some people over here. There's not a big, massive thing going on because of that. There shouldn't be, and there likely won't be, because most people are better than that. I think most of the black community is against blacks that would uprise, and most of the white community would be against white people to uprise because of this or that or the other thing. But yet, it's obvious that the media is getting some marching orders. The president gets marching orders. They all do. They're not the Dark Lords that are running the show. And I don't think that even the 33rd degree Council of the Masons, they're slaves of the Dark Lords. We don't know who these people are. They're not public figures. They're not coming out front. The ones that funded it all to begin with, that set it up. That's my opinion. I'm not sure. I do everything I can not to demonize people. I hate to demonize people. Believe me, my personal experience with Bush and that, and then seeing and I'm talking about the elder Bush, seeing him become president was shocking. And then his son. Although, it wouldn't surprise me if you watch the Enter the Temple video by Dan Hicks of Press for Truth, you will see them say that Senior or Junior Bush were not Masons. And yet they have some memorial or something over there in the temple for them guys. But and they could very well be the satanic characters, real deviant. I think that a lot of the Masons are generally kind of wholesome people in that, but they're involved in a very wicked scheme. And it doesn't matter how nice somebody is. I'm sure most of them are nice. I've heard, well, that's real nice people. Yeah, real nice. Yeah, I bet they all are real nice people. You better be real nice if you got something to hide. But Dan reveals that the Masons, according to Albert Pike, they serve Lucifer. They admit that. The light that came down from above. Here, here's a light, okay? And here's a light that comes down from above, okay? And there it is. And say you want to read something, Lucifer going to show you something, it's going to be like this. Okay, his light's underneath it. It's going to be distorted. You're not going to see what's there. He's not giving you the picture. He's not showing you. Okay, he's hiding that light. Okay, give you a little bit here, a little there. And that's what's going on with the Masons. They're being given a little bit of light here and a little there, given clues. That's where the pyramid and all that stuff came from. It's clues about real truths. There's real truths that are involved. The pyramid is 4 triangles in one. But what was really being shown is the tetrahedron. There's 4 triangles. And they had the pyramid and the eye of the pyramid and all this stuff. Well, this is the capstone. These I looked into. I was interested in the sacred geometry and stuff, and I look into that stuff, and everything that they have is it's kind of like it's true and it's not true. It's correct but not quite right. And Lucifer is telling him the secrets and saying, yeah, he's not lying. He's saying there's 4 triangles in it. And so we put together a pyramid with 4 triangles and think we have a sacred geometry. And it's all, and what they have is half of a octahedron. But the money, that whole thing, what they're doing, them chemtrailing us and all these things. I'll tell you what, I literally have been destroying my house. I've destroyed most of my furniture. I broke up a couple of couches, and I'm talking about because I've thrown them around in my house. Chairs, lazy boys, pretty decent ones, leather. I've been an angry man. This stuff has really made me angry, and we should be angry. I beat so many holes in my walls. There's a mirror. That's supposed to be a mirror. See, it's broke. I threw a chair at that wall. See the big dent under there? There's a couple of holes. Looks like bullet holes in that, but those were just, sticks that I threw like spears. There's stuff all over that. I broke up my house. I beat the crap out of this place. You know why? It don't do me any good to have a house to live in. I care not about this house if I don't have a country, if I don't have a planet. I haven't been that suitable to be around people. I got a lot of things that I'd like to do, and by God willing, we will do them. He's promised us living water while we're drinking fluoridated water. And we will get that living water. But in the meantime, this world has been so conformed to the ways of man, and the Masons have been the primary example. They are not the real puppeteers. They're puppets. They're dancing for the devil, and they're getting us to follow them. You look at these old movies and that, black and white movies, and I couldn't hardly stand watching those movies. They were all boring, but there's always these big wealthy homes, these men in suits, and these women with their tits in these fabricated bras and stuff that, just artificial looking mannequin bull crap, bunch of nonsense. And people want to be like that. You look at the Senate and the House, They're all wearing suits and ties. Almost all of them are shaved, nice haircuts. And I'll tell you, that disgusts me. Now, a lot of my redneck American neighbors and that, farmers and that, you know, oh, they get disgusted at me with my long hair. I noticed that back in the 60s. But you know why? You know one of the reasons why? Because they see long hair, they see somebody from behind, and they think, oh, there's a woman, and they get lustful. And somebody turns around, they got a beard or something, and it's a man, and then they feel disgusted. Okay, they should be disgusted with themselves. Okay, but instead they get disgusted with the hippie. The hippies were right. And preachers are saying, oh, the Bible says that you shouldn't have long hair. And you know, you look that word up, and the Greek word there for long is comb. And it actually means tassel, or, you know, and it's not even saying long hair. And, you know, nature shows that it's inappropriate for a man to what? Well, to groom himself and try to look all pretty and everything, for one thing. And the other thing is to have hair hanging down. It gets in your way, you know, for the way a man works. It's, you know, and with women, it does. It looks beautiful. See a woman with nice long hair, combed and cleaned and brushed, and or tassel braided. And that Bible is not saying that there's a law that God says that you got to shave and go to the barber. Okay, that's an image of the beast. What is expected of people to show their servitude to the system. Oh, you'll never get a job looking like that. You know I've definitely had heard that. And what's that got to do with money? I don't know, nothing except for that this hippie has figured out a lot more than my redneck neighbors and that I love. I love them people, believe me, I respect them. I'm not making judgments against them. And nobody can stop me from cutting my hair when I want. And if I was out there riding on a tractor or working in the fields, or, you know, being a mechanic or something, my hair would not be appropriate for the natural practicalness of it all. I'd agree, you know, but it isn't about that, and the Bible doesn't. There's no law in the Bible saying a man shouldn't grow his hair out or his beard. There's definitely no law that says you got to keep it neat and trimmed. There's a lot more important things about people that should come first before all that. But in this conformed world, those things come first. And it sickens me. Not because I was mistaken and thought a man was a woman. I don't make that mistake because I don't sit there and look at women that way anyways. I've been trying to be obedient to God all my life. But I should make another video talking about me and who I am and what I've gone through, because, well, my story is your story and we've gone through a lot of the same things. But I want to share this about the money. And one other thing about the money, and there's a man, Jonathan Kleck, who his early videos, he made some very important videos. What he's doing now, I'm not that interested in. I think it's become a job and he's needing money, and he's, you know, poor guy's got to try to please the people. I don't think he's able to really be himself like he was when he was folding up these 10s and 20s and showing some incredible stuff. 911, the Twin Towers being destroyed, Oklahoma City, the Pentagon. This is real stuff. I'm not going to go folding money for you. But those people that are printing the money have a sorcery behind them and a plan, and it's proven with the money. And I ran into Jonathan Kleck's video in the end of June of 2010, and it was when I first was actually really taking notice of the Gulf oil spill, because at first I wasn't paying attention to it that much, because for one thing I was certain they were going to cap it, that they could. It wasn't like, oh, they can't, you know. I'm like, no, we're human beings, man. We can do some stuff. I wasn't worried about it, and I there was a lot of oil going into the Gulf of Mexico, but that place is huge too. That drop of oil that went into the Gulf of Mexico, and it is only a drop in comparison to that Gulf. Wasn't enough to go and destroy the Gulf, and certainly not the oceans and all the currents around the world and cause a global catastrophe that a lot of people are saying. So I wasn't really paying attention to it because I didn't see it that way. But when they said they had to nuke it, that's when I started paying attention. And because they were saying that they had to nuke it, Lindsey Williams had said that the oil was wearing the pipes out, and when that wore out, it was going to open the ground up where the earthway, and that thing would just grow into like a great big sinkhole. And what was a 20-inch pipe was going to end up being hundreds of feet across with that much pressure oil rushing up. Now that would have been a big deal. And you know, I did think, oh yeah, maybe they're going to have to nuke it. And then I was like, no, that'd be the worst thing. And because I realized that there would be a tsunami, they wouldn't be able to contain that nuclear explosion. And that was when I saw Jonathan Kleck's video, and he showed on the $10 bill resort building on a shoreline with a wave of oil going over the top of it. This thing was, 12 stories high or so. And he was saying it was water and that someday, he had made the video quite a few years before that, or at least in 2008 or so. But when I watched it, they were talking about nuking the Gulf, and on that $10 bill, it shows a mushroom type cloud or a bright round spot in the background of this building with the wave of oil, and then some look like what could have been contaminants in the air or something. But this was really on the money, and the Federal Reserve has that money printed up. So the people behind the Federal Reserve were behind that activity there. They're the ones that did 911. It's on the $20 bill. They put it there because they are the ones that do it. They weren't seeing into the future. They were planning into the future. And I saw the hundreds of thousands of multiple person black plastic coffins sitting in the hot sun ready to be used. I saw huge amounts of white vehicles parked in locations along the Gulf from Florida. They're moving troops in. We weren't able to monitor what was going on in the Gulf, who was going on those boats and off them during the shift changes and all that. And I'm a warrior, and I think about those things because of that strategy and stuff, and the art of war. I even reported that they're moving foreign troops in the country, or that I suspected it. Of course, I don't know for sure. But if I was the one with plans like that, then yeah, that's what I would have been doing. I don't underestimate my enemy like George W. Bush will go get those cowards. They certainly weren't cowards. You can't go get them if they're already dead, as far as those who flew those planes, if that was the case. I don't care how they did it. I know who did it. And it's the Federal Reserve who we're feeding a pipeline of money, all the tax money and everything going at them. America should be disturbed. I know I certainly have been. And I haven't said much. I haven't tried to convince people, because the only thing I could do is become an insurrectionist. And that's not me. That's not the way I am. I'm not trying to create a war right now. And there ain't going to be one. God's given me the clearance now to talk these things and to say this. I didn't try to convince people of anything. But let me tell you, I saw a bunch of them white vehicles go by here that summer. And so I just suggested somebody look into it, that could be foreign troops coming up here. Later on, there was an explosion up here. Somebody writing some articles, so I don't know, had written article saying that, a bunch of American survivalists and that were in this area, and they were planning to overthrow the government, and that the government had to go and destroy them, and that they killed 400 Michiganders up here in this area where I live. Saoirse Fall, I think. And I read that article. My sister had emailed it to me, and I was like, oh, that's wishful thinking of the control freaks. But I saw it as, they may have blown up some foreign troops that, had been planted in this area, and I believe they were planting them around the country. And we got a lot of quarries and stuff. There certainly can easily be underground bases. There's a combat readiness center just 5 miles from here. And it's really a relatively secret base in some ways, and what's going on there, I don't know. I'm very suspicious. I think it's satanic for sure. They've been attacking me right along. Recently I don't know if you can see these spots on my leg. They're still there. There's that. There were 2 there. There's 2 over here. And two there. And they're brownish green color. And that happened about a week ago or so. And I got up out of my sleep and I couldn't walk. My foot wouldn't even point in front of me on that leg. I've been under a lot of attacks. A lot of people have. There's a lot of crap going on. And I'm not a crazy guy. Matter of fact, I got documentation to prove it. When I talk about myself, I'll show you. I'll show you my test results and who I am and some of my history. And explain some things I've gone through. I'm crazy, all right. I'm crazy about my family. Crazy about my countrymen. I'm not so crazy about the Federal Reserve. Matter of fact, my name for them is the fucking fucks. They don't love us. They're fucking fucks, and they're fucking with us. And I don't care to even use that kind of language, but it's the most appropriate, and I understand and see why they don't want us to say fuck, because it's the only perfect word to explain that kind of meaning, which basically means having doings without love. It's basically what it means. A relationship without love is just a fuck. And I'm of Dutch ancestry, and I understand that in the Dutch language, the word they use for breeding is fuck. And the farmer will go and say that cow needs to be fucked. That cow's ready to be fucked. And it's not a swear word or a cuss word over there. And that is the original meaning. And so as slang goes, it's a very appropriate word. There's nothing foul about it. It shouldn't be one of those words that we can't say. But the fucking fucks don't want us to say it, because if we say it, we can call them fucking fucks for what they are. Hundreds of trillions of dollars American people have produced, and we're in some kind of potential economic collapse coming on? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? It ain't gonna happen. Okay, America's not gonna go down. It's not gonna happen. This is a blessed country. God loves America. And one of the verses that a lot of people try to use about how bad it's going to be in America is that Jesus had said, well, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. But what does it say? They shall be eating and drinking and marrying right up until he comes. It's not about some frickin' Nephilim or alien invasion or any of that kind of stuff. And I love Steve Quayle. I think he's a man that has really put in excellent efforts in that. And, I've written him a lot of comments till, I don't know, he shut me out or closed his channel down, or, I don't get any news from him. I can't reply to him anymore. But, I was being real positive, then I finally said, man, you don't get it. And then I couldn't, but, I pray for him still. I pray for Alex Jones. I'll tell you, somebody I really respect and love a lot is Vinny Eastwood. He's definitely one of my favorites out there. But there's so many people I could imagine, and there's, a lot of people I try to listen to, the Mike Hogarts and Paul Bagleys, and, they just keep pissing me off, and I gotta shut them off, but they do have some good teachings. I don't think they're bad people. I don't think they mean wrong. But hundreds of trillions of dollars. And with the derivatives, they've created some kind of a quadrillion-dollar thing going on or something like that. I don't know. I think that's just a whole nother distraction. And they're trying to say that all that hundreds of trillions of dollars that the American people produced and paid through a huge pipeline going at the Federal Reserve from the banks and the IRS. I mean, do the math. I'd like to know how much money is going at them every day. It's huge. And that money goes out of our economy. No wonder we can't have our own businesses. And then we got zoning and all these regulations and have to license and all that. That's all part of the Masons have been used for all that. And they've been in the churches and getting the people to be conformists. Wear their suits and ties. I was raised up a Baptist here in Michigan. And I miss those days because I remember when it wasn't appropriate for women to wear nylons, pantyhose. They wore stockings and dresses. And the men weren't wearing dark suits and stuff like that. Most of the men didn't wear suits. And it just crept in more and more. I remember the first time a girl wore pants to school. And that was in Paw Paw, Michigan, down by Kalamazoo. That ain't some backwards place. Changes came on quick in this country. I remember kids, that smelled like wood smoke. They had dirt under their fingernails. But no, we all grew up and we're doing so much better, and we're all so much better than we were. We're dying by the millions. And they've robbed us of hundreds of trillions of dollars that we produced. And when God was talking about the money system, and he was saying that you have to pay back 10%, not 110% of that FIAT LUX. And that was only for those who actually were making money. There's money being issued out to everybody. Ron Wyatt got arrested when he snuck into Saudi Arabia. They put him in jail. They paid them guys while they were in jail. They issued money out to everybody in that economic system. Them guys saved up money while they were in jail and were able to use it as ransom money when they got to Jordan, because Jordan was going to hold them. This world's a lot different than what we realize. But I want to mention the stuff about the money. Try to get the people to comprehend what's going on, because when we know it, they can't do it anymore. But the conformity, that's the hard thing for people to break. And that's the image of the beast. That's worshiping the image of the beast. Now the Masons, this is another thing that I do want to share about them. And I got heard from a guy that Vinny Eastwood had been interviewing, James Wright, with a W, W-R-I-G-H-T, who was a 32nd degree Mason working for the Supreme Council in Austin or something, Texas. But he mentioned that they have the implants. They're promoting the implants for them. Okay, they worship the beast. Those are the ones who are in trouble. Okay, we got the number. We all got the number. We can't buy, sell, or trade without it. It's that way, and everybody needs to see it and realize it, and it doesn't mean that they're going to hell. But those with the implant that worship the beast, they're probably about as good as dead. And they won't be there till the second resurrection and face a great white throne of judgment. And at that time, they will be, some of them I believe are probably righteous by the standards that are required. Not all, yeah, they're involved in a whole evil thing, but some, it says at that time, some will be raised to shame and some to glory. But I personally believe that we're all going to be there. God's going to rescue all, for God so loved the world, and He's willing that none should perish. And I study and look into that stuff, and I try to understand it. And when I consider the heart of God, it's like, man, God's a winner, and He's not going to lose. He's not going to lose His creation. He's not going to lose us. Hey, we're the messed up ones. Our ideas are screwed up, not God's. But we're pretty good people. The American people are really wonderful, wonderful people. They don't deserve what's happened. It's a trick. It's a deception. There's a division that has been imposed upon us. And we're ripped off of hundreds of... We have about 1% of the money that we should have in this country. And I'm not even saying all that much money should be there. We don't need no hundreds of trillions of dollars. But we do need what is rightfully ours. And maybe I'll get into that a little more. Someday I might even bring the Bible into it, read a little bit of some things, and show you how I interpret the Bible. I'm not a Bible worshiper. I've thrown the Bible on the ground and stomped on it. I've kicked it across the room. Not because of God's word, but because of man's interpretation of the word and the problems that has caused. But Christians aren't the problem. And Christians don't start wars. Christians make good warriors. Now, if Christians do start wars, there's only one or two wars that I can think of that Christians really started, and one's a Revolutionary War, and the other's a Civil War. So, I think that, as sad as it is how conformed to the world so much of Christianity is, they're still, mostly they try to promote the obedience to God and the wholesomeness the best that they understand things. Most of the congregations are probably much, much better people than a lot of the pastors, who I believe don't even really believe. They worship Lucifer, and they're from the Masons, and they're faking this whole thing, and they're doing it for a reason, and they don't realize that they're wrong. I mean, I'm pretty convinced of that. I know that it makes a lot of sense to me anyways, that a lot of these pastors, one of my pastors when I was a senior in high school, and I really liked the man, and I always seemed to have trouble. My family was always trying to fix me, and my dad had arranged for the pastor to have a chat with me, wanted him to, talk to me. And this was after he wasn't even at our church there anymore. But he had come and he was in the area. And so he took me for a ride. And I'm pretty sure he was a Mason. And he told me, he said, I envy you. He said, you just keep doing what you're doing. He said, I can't. I gotta do what I'm doing. But you're still free, and you're doing the right thing. And he encouraged me, totally contrary to what my father would have expected. I'm saying this as a Mason. I think that many Masons, do repent. They do see. They do realize they can't do anything more. They've sworn oaths. They would do something if they could, and they can't. I believe my father-in-law I'm sure he was a Mason. I don't know if he was high level, low level, whatever. But he passed away recently, and I think the reason that he did was that one of the things that they wanted him to do was see that I was destroyed, and I think he repented of that. I think he saw it. And so they pulled the plug on him. That's just, I try to think the best for people. I hope that is the case, not that I know I was praying for the man, always. Although I had every reason to be angry at him. And I know for a long time he was afraid of me. And he was told things about me, especially after, he didn't know me until after the Marine Corps. And my wife, at that time, she told me that her dad was told that I was a drug dealer and I was heading for prison and stuff, and I wasn't going to make it. And they did try to put me in prison many times, and I've never been a drug dealer, but I was arrested 5 times in 2 weeks in the Marine Corps for dealing drugs. And they didn't even have any possession or anything. I was smoking it right in front of the officer or the duty officer or whoever coming through the squad bay, and I was sitting by the window, and after a while I knew they were coming. And I always admitted to smoking pot. And I sat right there and blew the smoke into the room, and you get up there, and twice I did that. Flicked the roach out the window. Like, you guys got no evidence. And they weren't doing piss tests at that time. And they didn't want a possession charge anyways. They wanted to find a quantity of weed, and they had known that I had just picked up a 1/4 pound of weed at the beginning of that arrest, and it was true, I did, but I wasn't a drug dealer. I was buying my ounce, and I was buying with other 3 people's money, their ounces, the 4 ounces. And the first time they came, I did have a 1/4 pound of weed, and I was not a drug dealer. And the most unbelievable thing, I actually had it tucked in between my sheets in my rack, and they tore my rack apart, and the sheets stayed together right there, and they didn't find it. And that, I believe God was watching over me. But I had a goon, and I knew he was a traitor, and his name was Griffin. And Griff, he was ratting on me. He was there. And then later on, I just had had my ounce, and I kept his stash good. They knew I had some weed, and they were trying to bust me. And they weren't able to do that, and I would say 2 weeks after that, I was discharged, and I was kicked out of the Marine Corps for the good of the Marine Corps with the honorable discharge. And they'd try to get a lot of dirt on me. They'd push me over the edge. A lot of things had happened. But hundreds of trillions of dollars that the American people produced that they don't have because they borrowed it, but they didn't really borrow any money because the Federal Reserve never gave any money off their pile. Their pile only grew. Only money was added to their pile, and they never gave any money off their pile. That money was issued out of nothing, and everything they got back was profit. Well, hey, there was, they were entitled to some money. I mean, they were having the bills printed and stuff like that, and there was a service being provided, but not not hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of service, for sure. And one other little quick note before I go, seeing how we were talking about the Masons and the Federal Reserve and the money and the printing of money, it reminded me, I had found out that all the stamps in the world and all the money orders, or at least like the federal money orders, post office money orders, but I think all the money orders and the stamps are all produced by the same mint or whatever. But I'm throwing that out there because the post office, who's behind the post office, who's behind the stamps, who's behind the dollar bills. They're the ones doing it to the people of the world, not just America. Everybody else in the world's getting screwed too. Alright. I love y'all. Look into things. I'll try to include a link to Enter the Temple by Press for Truth. If you look up Press for Truth and search temple, I'm sure you can find it. Dan Dix, he's from Toronto, I believe. Does a really good job. I enjoy his work. I love people. There's so many good people out there. I could just go on and on and on. And even people that I would disagree with the majority of their stuff, still provide good information, different things. You got to take things with a grain of salt sometimes, they say, whatever. But yeah, I'll try to give you that link so you can see that 33rd degree Supreme Council of the Masons, I believe, are servants of those that run and own the Federal Reserve, who are the Dark Masters. And I've had different run-ins with certain kind of people that I call feds. What I mean by feds is those that are part of that Federal Reserve, but I'm telling you, these guys are They're beautiful, handsome, tall, healthy men. You wouldn't think they're bad people. I think they would have liked me to have joined them, and instead I pissed them off because I chose to be obedient to God, and I done that at a young age, and I really, not that I didn't have my sins and stuff, but I didn't make the major mistakes. Okay. And we'll talk about that some other time, but I wanted to let you know that I got very, very angry at what they're doing, and how the cards are stacked against us. And I took it all to God before I came and talked to you guys about this. And now I'm talking to y'all, and I'm not saying don't be pissed off. Feel free to be pissed off about it. It don't hurt anybody. I haven't hurt anybody. Offend others at your own risk. That's what I've done. I've definitely offended some, knowingly. And we'll talk about that later. And I could easily be dead, and I'm not. And I'm very thankful. Even though at times I felt like I had done enough in my life. If God takes me now, I'll be all fine. I'm happy with what I've done. But I've never wanted to die, and I'm glad that I'm here. I only wanted to die to myself, die with Christ. So that is no longer me who lives, but Christ in me that lives. And I've sought for that. And we'll talk about that some other time when we don't got money on the brain. Money, 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 money! It's real. It's important. I love everybody. I hope you enjoy this video. It's got some interesting, probably some new perspective you haven't really considered before. Peace out.